What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the LA Soccer Hub Show. My name is Gio Garcia. Today is Monday, March 13th. A lot happened this past week. First, we'll start off with the LAFC. LAFC got a big win last night against the Revs 4-0. They put on a whooping, and they also ended up winning their CCL match. Here to help me talk about all that, we got Andy Diosa. Andy, how you feeling after that loss yesterday?
Oh man, that was a tough loss for the Revs. The Revs were coming in riding high. It felt good, undefeated start to the season. But yesterday they had a little bit of a taste of the LAFC MLS Cup champions, and it wasn't pretty. It wasn't pretty at all.
Yeah, and that's Andy's team. He's from Boston. He was very quiet throughout the press box. He's usually upbeat and stuff, and then you could tell as the goals kept coming, the energy started to fade away.
It's tough. It's tough out there. I mean, it's a team that plays well, but yesterday they just were just not good on the day, and LAFC exposed them every which way.
Yeah, LAFC, man, which is impressive because they had a lot of rotation and everything. But let's talk about first like the Latif Blessing. He got his ring. They did an amazing tribute video. I don't know if anybody got to see that, but I think that was just special on how um, you appreciate one of the players that was there from the start. The only player left from that inaugural season is Carlos Vela, from that 2018 season. Obviously, Latif Blessing just joined the Revs this offseason. He was appreciated, at BMO Stadium in front of the fans. What would you think about his time with LAFC and also being given his ring?
It was a good gesture by LAFC. Latif was a fan favorite, obviously here in LA, and I think that it was the right way to do it. Make sure he gets his ring in front of the crowd. Make sure the crowd acknowledges his return. It was always going to be emotional for him, but I think he's a very good player in terms of kind of just focusing on what the task is at hand. And it was funny because I spoke to him after the game, and he looked really upset. Rightfully so. I mean, they lost 4-0, but he did mention about how happy he was to return and just the energy and the love that fans have given him. I mean, if you think about Latif Blessing, you think about that 2019 team. He was such a crucial part to that midfield, along with Edward Atuesta, Mark Anthony Kaye, and I think that's when his appreciation really grew from the LAFC fans because he had been around the league, he had played defensively, but I think when he was kind of like a little bit of that motor in that midfield that year, it kind of took it to a different level. And off the field, he has always been great in LA from what I've seen and what I've heard. Fans really like him, and I saw a video of him speaking to a lot of LAFC fans after the game, well after the game, like inside the stadiums and in that field level club. So it was cool. It was cool. He was like I said, very happy about it, very upset about the result, but he did give a lot of props to LAFC. He said it was unfortunate for that to happen against his former teammates, but he gave a lot of props to a team that right now was flying, and it was good to see him and good for him to get that acknowledgement.
Yeah, Latif Blessing obviously was one of the favorite players, and I always remember after the game when I walked back to my car or whatever, he would always just wait out with the fans and sign the jerseys and take pictures with everybody, whether it was inside the stadium or outside the stadium. Dude was genuine. He was really cool. Yeah, and I think that's a player like that is always remembered. A player like that is never forgotten. And it was, unfortunately he's no longer with the team, but I think the way the team appreciated him and he was able to be part of this win and able to help LAFC grow and win throughout the years is very impressive and overall very very well deserved with that. With the celebration yesterday, it was unfortunate that he lost, but he knows better than anybody how talented this team is and what they've been able to do. So kudos to Latif Blessing because man, he made such an impact with these fans. Um, let's talk a little bit about this game because man, it was very impressive. Bwanga got a brace. He's hot. He has 5 goals in 2 games, which is just insane. Tillman got the other one, which was a banger, and then Steve got the final fourth one. What were your overall thoughts of this game and the performance and the individual performances?
Not to be lost on Latif, he had a really bad game yesterday, and I think that's something people didn't talk about because it was the emotions of, oh my God, he's back. He didn't play well. The Revs in general did not play well, but yeah, I think Denny Bwanga is on a different level right now, and I don't think it should surprise anybody because a lot of people did kind of forecast this season for him as an MVP caliber year, as potentially a Golden Boot year. And he's just showing his quality, and it's everything that Steve talked about him last season kind of on the forefront now, because now with Chicho Arango not around, it gives a little more openness to that front three, and then he's taking advantage of it so far. He's in a really good space. He's dangerous every time he's on the ball. Like anytime he touches the ball, you kind of sense that fear, like, oh, what is he going to do? 1v1, or is he going to cut inside? And I think that he's just showing his qualities as a player. Like I said, like Steve has mentioned time and time again. So I think that part is very good for LAFC because he's stepping up to the plate. Tillman had a great game. I thought he was probably LAFC's best player on the night. I think he just looks very comfortable already. And that's credit to Steve Cherundolo and his coaching staff. I've been saying this for a long time now. I think whatever credit people are trying to give this coaching staff is not enough. I think hands down he should have been coach of the year last year. Granted, Jim Curran had a really good season, but it's unreal what Steve and company has been able to do with this team. I mean, getting players like Tillman, Boang obviously came in last season, but a player like Tillman to go in and just kind of look right the part right away. And we'll talk about this later, but it's to the point of Steve knew him in Germany and knew the profile type of player that he is. And that's the reason why he's like, this is what we want, and it fits perfectly. So Tillman has been great. And to see Stipe get a goal is big time because I think he's been pretty close to scoring. And Steve says that he's really he shows those qualities in practice. So to see him get that goal late is good. But I think overall it's just the way LAFC is able to kind of manage games, right? Mm-hmm. Those first 15 minutes were in the refs' favor, and I think it took a while for LAFC to settle. But once they did a few different things in terms of formations and roles for certain people, I know he had mentioned Bouanga was kind of like, shadowing Matt Post to the Revs defensive mid a little bit. So it's just like little things in the game, intricacies that things change. And maybe the casual fan doesn't notice, but when you peel it back and see like these are the adjustments that are being made, and we know how great Cherundolo was last season with adjustments, that's what changed the game and opened it up. And, you get an early penalty and it kind of was like, okay, a little bit of breathing room as well. But they just had their foot on the gas and never really let up. I mean, it's a team that is playing well beyond what it should be for its third game of the season. Yeah. I mean, even their second game of the season, the Champions League game, it's like this team looks already very, very well established. And granted, there wasn't that much turnover. So they do have a similar core to what they had last season, but it's unreal how people could kind of just step in and hit the ground running without too much of an adjustment period. When you look at other teams, that's kind of like, oh, they're going to need time to do this and time to do that. And LAFC just seems like anybody that's plug and play just plays the role effortlessly. And to me, that has to do with coaching.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. What this coaching staff has done with Steve, John Thornton, how they gone about the recruiting, I think to me, what LAFC has done with the recruiting and identifying the type of players that they want to play in their system. And it's not just about getting any random or any winger, right? Does this player, we've heard Steve talk about this, does it fit our profile, the way we want to play? Does this player do what we want to do, right? Going to Boanga, we want a winger that obviously can score goals, but also could come back in defense. He's big, physical. You saw that second goal, how he uses his body, and right, that fit the profile, and he was able to seamlessly fit because that's a certain style that they're going to play, and that's what they've gone. And not too many teams. I'm surprised why not too many teams do that. Look, it's hard. I know it's harder on some aspects, especially like some teams in the MLS don't have a clear identity of who they are and what they want to play. LAFC does, and I think it makes it easier. And you also got to be more selective with which players you bring in, and that's what they've done. And look, you're gonna miss on a couple players, but when you hit on the signings and everything, you see what LAFC is doing, and I think it just goes to credit to the coaching staff, but also the work they're doing off the field, off the field and recruiting and everything. We'll talk about, what they announced today here in a little bit, but it's just impressive. And what we've seen from Tillman last night and Stipe, I didn't really watch too much of the preseason, but seeing him against LD Alajuelense, he almost had a goal that in the given goal. He almost had that goal, but it didn't work out for him. But he got his goal here. He did I did see him struggle a little bit, but I realized that, look, this is just him in his third game in the season. I think Stipe is going to be like another Mahala or like a player that has big moments, has big goals because of how fast he is and how he reads the game and what he can do as a winger. And I think it's just so impressive with the recruiting that they've done to bring in these players and, like you mentioned, have that instant impact right away. 3 games in, man, like they look almost, I would want to say almost like that mid-season form. And it's crazy to say that, in 3 games, I think I tweeted this out. They have scored 10 goals, 3 wins, 1 hat trick, only 2 goals against. That's an impressive stat.
Yeah, and to the Stipe point, quickly before I touch on that, he's 20 years old, and Steve said a really important thing yesterday. Like he's a long way away from home. Like he's far from
Mhm.
Croatia. He's here in LA by himself. That adjustment period, personally, more so than the professional
Takes a
part,
long
it's
time.
a part of the process for a young kid. So that's a great point. Like, I think he could really grow into his own and be really, really good for this team. And yeah, I mean, the team is flying right now. Like, if you even take a look at those 2 goals they gave up, like it was when the game was kind of already won in their heads against Portland. And, it's not necessarily great goals that they gave up, but I mean, those 2 goals are just a footnote for what they've been able to do this season. And I think we've talked about it. Like if that Rose Bowl game happened, it might have been a very bad outcome for the Galaxy, the way that
Yeah.
LAFC looks. And what's impressive to me mostly is that the narrative is always like, and don't put it beyond us too, because we're too Chicho Arango like big fans and advocates for them should have kept him. But they've had 6 goal scorers already in these 3 games and 10 goals. Like, sure, I think that having that number 9 solidified might come back to haunt them, but I think they're showing right now like they're gonna be all right. And once again, Steve kind of in a bang on my chest type of way was like, it's not about who we have, it's about
Yep.
people just kind of playing roles. And as much as people might not like that, he's proving it, and LAFC continues to prove that. So I think that, I think that they're getting contributions from a lot of different places. And you saw yesterday the class of certain players when like Sifu and Ryan come on the field, and the game kind of switches a different chip. And it's just like the level that these players are at is like I said, for this early in the season, it's pretty impressive.
Yeah, and just another point just to add to that is on Steve Sharondolo, under Steve Sharondolo, they play as a team. And you these last few games, you don't see a drop off, whether Carlos Vela comes off, whether Tillman starts or Stipe starts. There's not a drop off. And that to me tells me that they clearly buy into the system, what Steve Sharondolo is telling them, and they really play as a team. There's other clubs around the world that like you have the best players in the world and they don't play as a team, and everybody is buying into what Steve Sherman has been putting out. Obviously, they won a championship, they won the MLS Cup last season, but to do this in a quick amount of time, and under his first season wins the championship, under his second season, the rolling look 3 games in. I know it's early, but the rolling high. It goes to show like how he knows how to get a young group of men or even veterans like Chiellini to buy into the system because like there's not necessarily with players like Chiellini and Bell last season. You're not necessarily going to teach them anything new. You're really not, right? Because those guys are superstars in their own right. But it's also I think what's so impressive about what Steve Sharondolo's been doing is whether you're right, you're a veteran player or you're a young player, everybody's bought into the system. Everybody believes in what Steve Sharondolo is saying. And even when he takes out Carlos Vela, there's not a big drop. You don't see Carlos Vela get upset. He understands that the team is more important. And I'm seeing that from everybody that wears the LAFC jersey. They understand and they believe and trust what Steve Sharondolo is doing. And it's very impressive.
Most definitely, man. I just, like I said earlier, I think that he was grossly overlooked last season. And granted, I get when coaches have certain teams and certain talent, that kind of takes a little bit of a hit on the credentials and the success and the accolades. But it's absolutely incredible what he's been able to pull off. And he'll be the first one to say, like, it's a testament to his coaching staff as well. It's not just him, it's Mark Dos Santos and Ante and all those guys. So they hit the ground running last season, and it seems like they don't have any signs of slowing down anytime soon.
Yeah. Let's move on. Let's talk about the big news today. Or let's quickly talk about the big win. They won. They beat LD Alajuelense 3-0. Massive win on the road against Costa Rica. That to me was a big win. Obviously they're going to play this Wednesday here in LA at BMO Stadium. To me, if LAFC plays anything similar that they played the last 2 games, this game is going to be the same. Obviously, we don't want to look past it because 3-0, anything could still happen. What are your thoughts on LAFC moving going forward? Because they have a busy schedule with a lot of these games coming in. They play LD Alajuelense, and I think Saturday or Sunday. I think Saturday they fly to Seattle, so it's a lot of moving parts for them.
Yeah, and I think that part is kind of overlooked as well when it comes to the travel. You mentioned last time Costa Rica is not necessarily a close trip, and to have to do that, and come back, but it's once again how serious and focused this coaching staff is, right? We saw with Austin, they kind of rotated the lineup, and then they were shocked by a team that they probably shouldn't have even struggled against. Lost 3-0 down in the Dominican Republic against a Haitian team. Whereas LAFC is like, yo, we're not underestimating these guys one bit. Alajuelense is a top, or I think in second place now in the Costa Rican table. So they're up there. They've been having a good domestic season. And they knew like this was going to be a high stake, high pressure game. But once again, they went into it with the right mindset. They said, forget rotation. It's early in the season. Like this lineup should be our best, and we're going to approach it that way. And that's what they did. And they put a dominant performance out there. I mean, Giorgio Chiellini, for his age and his background, just continues to do things that are amazing. And you're talking about a place that, a packed stadium. Salute to the LAFC fans that made their presence felt there, which was amazing as well. But LAFC was very determined to play that game and make a statement. And I think they did. I think that internally they've always believed that they could win this competition, right? They think that they have the team that's good enough to do that. I think with that showing, they're telling everybody else, hey, we not only could win this, we're going to go to win this. Honestly, wouldn't even be surprised to see not that much of a rotation against them this week at the bank, because it's not over, right? It's a big lead that they have, but at the end of the day, you can't really you can't take too many chances. And the way we talked about roster constructions, you don't have too many pieces that you can necessarily rotate in because of the pack schedule and looking kind of ahead to go to Seattle. So a great job, great CCL showing, and from a team that's kind of already been through those battles in a different type of way with that weird COVID tournament. But this is a team that is going to try to win this tournament, and I don't see why anybody right now should believe otherwise that they can do that.
Yeah, just very impressive all around, and we'll see. And to me, what I'm most interested in how he manages the minutes of these players because these games are coming in quick. Yeah, let's switch over. Big news today from LAFC, man. They announced a partnership with FC Bayern for Bayern, obviously Bayern Munich and LAFC. They launched a joint venture. It's called Red and Gold. I'm just reading off here, it's insane. This partnership here, I'll read this in a quote. A partnership of this magnitude is the next step of our development. Let me share this real quick so the people watching this can actually see what's going on here. This is from the press release that was today. Here, this is from Oliver Kahn. He says FC Bayern, let's go right here. FC Bayern will expand its promotion of young talent with LAFC Los Angeles Football Club on an international level. Soccer is developing rapidly, which is also evident in the transfer market. We see this partnership as an opportunity to strengthen FC Bayern in the sporting competition with the club's best in Europe and in the Bundesliga. Excuse me. And I think this is really important right here. The fact that the 2026 World Cup will largely take place in the U.S. Where we already have an office in New York, makes Los Angeles and even more attractive. I expect a boost in quality and young talent in Major League Soccer. Andy, quickly, give me your thoughts on this partnership with FC Bayern because it is just massive.
You see the jersey. I like to announce today that I am FC Bayern's LA scout. I was playing.
You're right.
No, it's just it's a testament to what LAFC has been able to do, and I think that it is interesting because it's a German team, and Cherundolo's history in that country and in that league, it leads me to believe that he had a pretty decent part to play or say in that. But once again, it's a testament to what LAFC has been able to do in 5 or 6 years now in the league. They just continue to impress and do things that other teams are not doing, and they're so ahead of the curve. And it's what a team in this LA market should be doing. It's what you would expect from a team that wants to navigate the way LAFC does, and it's in a huge market. They continue to knock these things out the park. It's going to be great both ways for development, and I wouldn't be surprised to see players like Mahala now be on Bayern's radar, players that that have been around a little bit and things like that, And you're talking about not just a team, you're talking about a team that's consistently in Champions League,
Best in the world.
consistently successful, and eyes from all over the world. It's such a good look for LAFC, and I think it's just they're just paving the way for what other teams should be doing for some reason are not doing. LAFC is just, like we said earlier, everything they seem to be doing right is on the field, off the field, whatever the case may be. They're just setting the way. So this is a great look. I love that that this partnership happened, and I think that it hopefully could potentially open the doors for a lot of players both ways.
Yeah, look, for me, what LAFC is doing, look, they're winning on and off the field, and to me, it's just so impressive that what the work that they've been putting on the field, and now they continue to put in the work. To me, LAFC is just outworking everybody in the MLS. They just are, because opportunities like this don't just come. FC Bayern was previously, I think, with FC Dallas, and I forgot who tweeted, Tom or whatever, said that that partnership is no longer with them. Now you see FC Bayern, partner with LAFC, and that's just massive for LAFC. Obviously, when a team is consistently in the Champions League, consistently winning and dominant, and like you mentioned, you have players like Mahala, and you have other young players that potentially now have a door to go to Europe, right? If you can't just go right there, I think this was also going to be a lot of recruitment, a lot of players from South America, just around the world, that like, hey, if I go to LAFC, I could have a chance to go to Bayern or whatever. And also LA is an attractive market. Look, we live in an awesome city. The weather is great for most of the year. And you also can play for a really good professional football club, soccer club, right, in LAFC. And I think that's just impressive. I think the partnership that the LAFC got in here with Bayern Munich, look, every day it just seems like LAFC is doing something that no other team in the MLS is doing. And I continue to say this: LAFC continues to set the standard for what a club, what a professional soccer club, football club, whatever you want to call it, in the MLS should be. And partnerships like this, FC Bayern, just goes credit of their testament of the work that they've been putting on the field and off the field. And it's just very impressive. And I'm excited to see where this partnership goes.
Most definitely, man. It's an opportunity that, if you look back at the history of MLS, you say maybe these opportunities are a crazy pipe dream or a thought that may, have that connection. And now for a team that just won MLS Cup, who I think globally is starting to kind of be known in ways of obviously success in Champions League if they do it this year, things like that. It's just massive to say that a team like Bayern is linked up with a team like LAFC, who's so ambitious in their own ways. So it's huge. It's huge.
Yeah, no, that's really cool, and we'll see what eventually comes out of that, because it's just impressive to see. Lots of games going on with them. Obviously, we'll see what happens here on Wednesday. CCL, that's the next match for them. Like we said earlier, the games are coming in quick. Anything else you'd like to add before we move on here from LAFC?
Yeah, at one point on Ryan Hollingshead, he left
Oh, that's right.
yesterday with seemed like a concussion, bad injury. Steve was very vocal about that after the game, kind of made a call to the refs to protect players a little better. Steve said he wasn't doing well. He didn't have much of an update, but he said he wasn't doing well. So I doubt that he's on the team sheet for Wednesday. And going forward, we mentioned how much injuries could play a part or a role in kind of teams' trajectories during the season. But Danny Maldonado, who did enter the game yesterday at some point later in the match, has played outside back and is an option that LAFC does have to maneuver if Ryan does miss some extended time. But hopefully it's not too crazy. But yeah, I know Steve did make a point to mention that, so I wanted to bring it up as well.
Yeah, and also I was going to see, because I think who started there? Was it Palencia that got the start? A right back yesterday? Yeah, Palencia. So we'll see. Obviously, it's not looking good for Ryan Hollingshead, so we'll probably see Palencia either start there, because that's unfortunate that happened to him, because especially when in a game he came in as a sub and that happens, that's just brutal, especially with the CCL game coming up. So yeah, we'll stay tuned to see what happens with that. All right, let's wrap things up right there with LAFC. All right, now let's switch over to the Galaxy side, because it's a completely different story. My goodness. I watched this game against SKC. It was brutal to watch. If anybody watched this, it was just a tough watch. Neither team could score. I would say SKC couldn't score because they had all the chances. LA Galaxy had very, very, very few chances. It was a hard watch. It was hard to watch this game. I was watching, thank God for MLS 360, because I was able to stay in tune with other games and at least other games that were more exciting. What do you think of this performance, this game? They did walk away with the point. Look, when you don't play well and you still walk away with the point, I think that's still good, but you want to see better things from them. What were your thoughts on this result and the game?
My thoughts were, I wish I would have did something else with those 2 hours of my life. I mean, listen, man. The Sporting Kansas City had 30 shots. Only 11 were on target. The Galaxy had 8 shots. 2 were on target. That just tells you everything you need to know. First of all, that SKC can't score to save their lives, but B, that the Galaxy are just so disoriented right now. And it's one thing if it kind of, you grow into a game and things happen. This was from the very beginning. I think like those first 5 minutes, SKC was just completely suffocating the Galaxy. And I'm like, I'm not even sure the Galaxy have even touched the ball right now. It was from like off rip, it was a bad start, and it kind of foreshadowed what was going to happen the rest of the game. The Galaxy were never ever in that game. They just Jovic was basically MIA because he didn't have anybody to basically get him the ball and no connection there. The midfield struggled. And once again, defensively, the Galaxy are trying to piece things together where it just is not. It's not working. I think the one bright spot is that Jalen Neal did get the start. And if I'm Greg Vanney, I'm giving him the keys over Mavinga, over maybe even Sega if we see him come back and maybe not be as impressive, because it's a player that has quality, a player that's on the radar and has been kind of waiting for this chance. And I think he was pretty solid, given, we're trying to pick pieces of what was actually good about that game for the Galaxy. I think he was pretty solid and deserves that more opportunities going forward, but they just can't seem to figure it out. And we mentioned it. If a team that's missing, I'm not even going to mention Costa because right now that's more of a lost cause. But if a team that's missing Chicharito can't show ability without him on the field, it's very concerning, because you run the risk of not just being a one-dimensional team. And there's no way that a midfield that talented, with a striker like Jovic, who has shown that he has very good qualities, is unable to offensively be a threat in a game against a team that I don't think is that great. I think, sure, they were peppering them, like I said, with many shots, but SKC is not that much of a threat in my eyes for the Galaxy to look that bad. Sure, it is a tough place to play at. And Greg was like, we'll take the point. It's a good point. But if you look at the overall theme of things, that's another bad performance following what their game against Dallas was. And you have to be concerned, because you could talk about turnover and you could talk about needing more players and more time, but that's just it's not going to get the job done with anybody. It's not convincing given the situation that the team's already in. And they need to get it going quick, man. They have no other option but to get going, because I mentioned that, I think, on the last week's podcast, like this, if it gets bad, if it keeps continuing to get bad, it's going to get ugly really fast for this franchise, as if it's not already that way from the relation with the fans and stuff like that. So it's just a bad performance, but you got to take away the point. You got to take away Bond being able to come up big in certain moments, which is also a good sign. But yeah, they need to figure it out.
Yeah, to me, it was just not a good, but I think they're lucky to walk away with the point. I think look, if you see, I think a team or FC Dallas that was able to finish their opportunities. If SKC was just a little bit better, then I think you're maybe talking about the Galaxy not winning this game. But look, it turned out in their favor. Jonathan Bond came up big. I'm with you. Jalen Neal was probably the bright side of everything. He looked really mature, for his first start and what he did. And I think, when a center back has a game that you don't really talk about him, that's a good thing, right? We didn't really talk about him having a mistake or he just seemed mature. Look, it's just one game, right? I think you want to see him against, against the Timbers, against LAFC, and teams that they will get tested. Maybe if he would have played a little, or I don't know if he played against FC Dallas, but if he would have got some minutes, to test him. And that's what we're really going to see. But I think moving forward, I'm with you. You got to start Jalen Neal with Martin Caceres if that's going to be the pair duo, because he's tall, he's lengthy, he got speed, and just reads the game really well. On the other side, I just think, to me, it's like, look, they don't have the wingers to play the way Greg Vanney wants to play. Well, I think it was a 4-3-3 formation that they went with. They had Memo Rodriguez on the wing, and then I had Efrain Alvarez on the wing and Jovic. I still think Jovic is an amazing player and what he can do. I just feel like he didn't get no service. It was hard for him to create any chances. the wingers didn't do anything, and then Ricky Pooch like wasn't able to do anything, and I'm shocked. I'm shocked that Ricky played that bad because he is able he can do so many things, and he was limited by SKC, or he was having a bad game. I don't know what it was, but a player that talented, I don't know, should not be having bad games like that. And I don't think SKC is that, no disrespect, but I don't think SKC is that talented to limit Ricky in the midfield. And I'm just very surprised that he played that poorly. Maybe it was just a dysfunction and not being able to get the ball out and moving around. But like, to me, I don't understand why. I think also, like, if you're the head coach or you're Greg Vanney, you have to be able to adjust and switch things up. And I think he ended up switching through a 3-5-2 formation. But I think that, to me, they should have started that from the get-go. And I think those are certain things that we see from Greg Vanney, which I think at times he's a little too stubborn to switch his formation, and does. And he said it this. I really don't. I think Greg Vanney's a great coach, but I don't think he understands that his team is just not that talented the way he wants them to play. And with the team that you with the system that you need to rely on wingers, you don't really have, no disrespect, you don't really have those talented wingers. Efra is not the guy to give you that speed. He does look better. He does look a little slimmer this year, but he is not that guy to be a grand sir that has that speed and that pace. Memo Rodriguez, unfortunately, a couple games in, I don't think he's the guy either. You got to bring in those wingers to do that. But if you don't have those wingers to do that, then you have a Raheem Edwards that can go up and down the field, right? I think a 3-5-2 formation is so much better for them. And I don't know why he took out Joveljic, and he should have just kept Joveljic and Preston Judd up top, because Preston Judd did up top, and you see how big physical body is. For whatever reason, I just don't know why he doesn't want to play two strikers. And I think that is, to me, I think as great of a coach Greg Vanney is, I think he's also an Achilles heel to this team at certain times with certain games like this. Because I don't know how he doesn't read that and be like, let me add Preston Judd, because taking out Joveljic, you take out another goal scorer instead of assisting your team with the limited resources. I don't know. I may be just going off too much in a tangent, too much of a rant, because we're not getting those 2 hours back. But I'm like, come on now. What are your thoughts?
I'm the conductor of the Efra Alvarez hype train, and right now we are running out of gas.
I'm trying to tell you.
We're stuck in the station right now, man. It's unfortunate because the team just does not look dangerous moving forward. And like you mentioned, with a player like Ricky's caliber, you should, every time you're on the front foot, look like you have options to go. But anytime Efra touches the ball, it's like he's not going to make the right pass, or he's going to give it away. Memo is a bench player. Like, I think Greg Vanney might know that, but I just don't think he has anybody in the moment to kind of match that. I mean, if I'm him, I'm giving Tyler Boyd more of a run and see how that looks, because what Vanney's doing right now is trying to figure it out. And we've mentioned this time and time again. He's been trying to figure it out for a while, and it's unfortunate that it hasn't happened. I like the two striker idea. He clearly does not. But at the end of the day, you have to be a little more cohesive, right? It's fine to struggle, and it's fine to have some bad moments and things like that, but they just haven't looked at all like a formidable opponent in 2 matches. And it's granted, like we mentioned earlier, their opener got canceled. If they would have played LAFC looking like that, it might have been a nightmare off rip for them, because they just haven't figured out what works for them. And it just, I think that the team does have the talent. I think Vanney does have the ability to fix it. But we can't stay on the same fact of what we did last year. We need players to come in. We need to make signings. This is all stuff that should have been handled already. Yeah. And it goes back to the larger point about the front office stuff. It's just like, you need to have these contingency plans if somebody like Julian's leaving, if you have your 2 wingers that, granted, nobody was going to say that Cabral and Grand Sir were the best players, but you have that drop off and you don't necessarily fill those roles quickly enough to not have this be a transition. And somebody mentioned in the press box yesterday, like, oh, I think they're probably going to need about like 2 months. And I was like, 2 months is a little too long to try to figure it out, right? Like, you don't have really 2 months to try to figure things out the way things are set up. It is a long season, and a lot of teams get into the playoffs, but you need to figure it out a little faster than that, because it's going to come down to the point that they're going to lose these games. The fans are going to be more disconnected than they already are. And now you were talking about a crisis. It's an easy way to put it, a crisis. And I don't think the Galaxy have necessarily dealt with a crisis like that in a while. I mean, they've had bad seasons and they've had things, but this is the way it's looking right now. Early on, it looks like it's a dark, dark path and a dark road because it doesn't seem like there's any way out. Now, Greg said that Chicharito and Costa are expected back on the field this week, practice. I don't know at what capacity. It's a good sign for their progression, but nothing leads me to believe that Chicharito hopping on the field or Costa hopping on the field is going to magically fix these things. Maybe it will give them a bit of a boost. But my point to what I've always mentioned is you can't be so one-dimensional and say because Chicharito is on the field, now the team is going to look different. Because if that's the case, then it's going to be really easy for defensive teams to say, hey, shadow this dude, get him out of games, and then we'll worry about the rest after. So I think right now the reason why Ricky hasn't been able to be as dominant is because teams are like, all right, who else is going to hurt us? Like, let's really like focus on trying to clog that midfield and make sure that he doesn't have the ability to roam in free spaces. Once we cut that off, it's like his outlets are to the right or the left. Neither of those guys worry us. Then we could focus on, making sure Jovic is kind of out of the picture as well. So if I'm a coach playing against the Galaxy right now, I'm like, this is kind of simple. This is easy. This is easy work. But you also have to like think about what's coming up. Like they got the Whitecaps next, and it's so funny to me that everybody's like, oh, Vancouver this, Vancouver that. They just smacked on their opponent in CCL. And if you don't think that's going to give them confidence going into a game like the Galaxy game, sure, maybe in the league you're like, the Whitecaps don't really look great. But listen, man, it's a game that the Galaxy should win on paper, and I'm not confident that they will. So that's a whole different talking point there.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I'm with you. And you make a great point about Ricky. He didn't have anywhere to distribute the ball. You're right. It's kind of tough to do those things. I just felt I'm just going on the point. I just felt like sometimes he was getting the ball. He was losing the ball a little too much for the type of quality player he is. But yeah, look, when we talked about what we talked about earlier, right? When you have certain teams that have a clear identity in the way they want to play, right? I think Greg Vanny already has had this idea that how he wants his team to play, but also I think the reality is that he doesn't have the players to play the way he wants. And you mentioned, right, like if we need to have essentially a backup plan, if so and so leaves and this and that, they're not replacing these wingers quick enough. Douglas Costa is nowhere to be found. I think everybody has already kind of given up on him until he shows any forms of life. But yeah, when you don't have the wingers and these players to do this, and you don't have this plan, and you're not able to adjust to what you have, or willing to change your formation and do these different things, because I really do think with the way they're playing and the limited options that they have at winger, they got to change that formation. To me, it's just that plain. You got to change the formation. You got to play with two up top, 3-5-2. That's just, to me. I just don't see any other way. I just don't see the 4-3-3, unfortunately, working with the roster that they have with Chicharito and Costa out, right? I just don't see it. I just don't see the 4-3-3 formation. If you start those two guys, I did like what I saw from Tyler Boyd. But yeah, outside of that, I don't know. Like the winger situation, especially on a team that depends on it, is just so crucial. And you got to bring you should have brought these wingers in from January, February. We're already in the middle of March. And yeah, you can't be, especially when you only have, you have the season. You're not in CCL. You're right. All these other tournaments haven't even started. And to me, it goes to the same thing. Oh, when are they going to figure it out? When are they going to figure it out? Eventually, it's going to be like, it's going to come down to the point, like, what are they doing? And you're right. It leads to the decisions and everything that the front office has been doing, because it's a lot going on, and a lot of these things I think factor to, and it trickles down to a team. Look, when you're home, when a lot of things are happening in your home, the fans aren't online, this and that, you're not playing well. Eventually, all that's going to come together, and we may see it happen this Saturday, because we know what's going on. Let's get a little bit into that, because I know, I think I saw you tweet about that. About the protest. They're gonna have a protest at the start of the game or before the game. What are your thoughts on that? Because this team's not gelling right now, and now the fans already aren't gonna go to the game, but they're gonna go out there to protest.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the people could try to mask this whatever way you want and say, oh, the front office doesn't care, this and that. They're gonna have no other option but to listen and care if this continues, and especially if the team is not playing well. Winning helps everything. And if they're winning, then maybe some people are like, yeah, we'll go to the games and stuff like that. But I think Saturday is going to be surprising in the turnout for the fans, because it seems like a lot of them are just not there. And I think that there's going to obviously be people in the stadium. But for a home opener, I think this is what it comes down to. For a home opener, you expect, right? You expect a big crowd. This is LA, the Galaxy. Like, the history's there, everything's there. You expect a big crowd. You expect a nice atmosphere, and you're probably going to expect to win. You need that energy to back you, especially if you're coming off 2 losses. They're not going to necessarily have that energy on Saturday. And now you have the protest that's going to happen. It's just going to add to that. And they're saying, like, hey, protest, and then we're out. Like, we're going to go watch the game at a bar or something like that. And I think that if that continues, which it seems like it is going to, the Galaxy are going to feel it all the way from the top to the bottom. And once, I've said this plenty of times, once the players start talking about things like that and saying, like, the fans aren't here, and start complaining, then that's when things are going to get real. Maybe right now it's not as, I guess, important to people because it's just fans against front office. Let the players get involved and start talking about the lack of support and things like that in the stadium, and you'll see how quickly things turn up. So, as many problems as they might have on the football field and trying to figure out tactics and formations, and you're right, I think a formation change is probably best for Vanny. We've seen many teams all over the world change formations and give their team a new light. But at the end of the day, if your team is not winning, and your team is not only not winning, just looking disappointing in those terms, and the fans are already in a negative place to begin with, it's going to get ugly. And it's the same, even the thing with Chicharito and the whole announcing his injury on Twitch and the transparency there and things like that. Like, all those other things play a very maybe a small role, but into the bigger picture, like you mentioned. And the bigger picture right now is a bad one, and it's going to continue to be a bad one. I think even if the Galaxy end up winning Saturday, the fans are not going to miraculously say, oh, things are, all of a sudden great, because they're not. And you can't look over it as much as you would like to. There's obviously still tickets available. I saw the Galaxy team account tweeting about it, and it's always interesting to see Galaxy tweets and then see the fan replies under that.
Oh, it's brutal. Yeah, it's definitely brutal for them. Yeah,
it's just a bad situation in general. And when your 2 star DPs are MIA right now, one more so than the other, but neither of them are on the field, that's just a recipe for disaster. We know how teams are successful in MLS with their DPs on the field. New England yesterday at LAFC was it's a great testament to that. They had 2 DPs that were on the bench. One was injured. One just hasn't been playing well. And it's like, your team can't aspire to be successful and win things if your DPs are not collaborating. So, I mean, the fan protests, like I've mentioned, I'm in favor of what they're doing. They should be voicing their opinions, and I think they're doing it in a respectful manner. But sooner or later, it's going to get heard more so than it is right now, and I'm 100% positive on that.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that as well. And I think also too, look, the first 2 games that you see from this LA Galaxy, and no, like, if you're on the tipping point, like, man, I want to go watch this team, or I don't think seeing these first 2 games of the Galaxy makes it exciting to want to go spend your Saturday night at Dignity Hill Sports Park. I just don't see that. It does not seem enticing. Why would you? When you
White Caps at
that, and the Whitecaps, yeah. Yeah, it's just nothing that they've shown so far is going to make it look. And I know some people are still going to show up, and I'm not trying to stop people from going. But, like, if you're talking about those fans that are protesting or anything like that, like, I think the thing that will tip fans over is excitement, them winning and then smashing teams and doing all these things. But right now, they don't have a clear understanding how they want to play. Their 2 DPs you mentioned aren't on the field. It just seems like they're all over the place. The fans they're not all riding on the same ship. Everybody in the organization, which is fans, front office, players, they're all on their own agenda, right? Front office has their agenda, players have their agenda, which for the most part is in line, quote unquote, with the front office. Fans, for the most part, supporters are not with the front office, and I don't think you could be. I 100% believe this. I don't think you could be a successful club if you don't have the 100% backing of your fans. Without a doubt, you cannot be. I don't care what you tell me or anything like that. You're not going to be a successful club, especially on topics like this that what are going on, and they don't back the leader. We've seen this in different places. When you don't back the leader, the person in the front office, you don't have that support from your fans, you're not going to be a successful club in my eyes and what I believe in. And I definitely do believe I like what the fans are doing, how they're going. And like you mentioned, they've done it respectful, but I just don't think I could see this club being really successful with how they're navigating the ship in all these three different parties going three different ways. We'll have to see what happens this Saturday. It's not very promising, but I don't want to discourage anybody that's planning on going there on Saturday. Um, there are
Jill,
some. Go ahead.
one
Go ahead.
point on that, like look at this roster, right? And I don't think this has really been mentioned much. Look at this roster, how it's constructed right now, like the players that they have, the personalities they have. If you think about last season and perhaps them getting off to a bad start last year or having rough patches, you have players, Julian Araujo, maybe Sasha Kleshton, Victor Vasquez, players that in moments would probably step up internally in the locker room that are veteran players or that have that type of stature that would perhaps be a strong part in that locker room mentally to kind of let the group collective a little bit at ease because they've been around. Who in this roster right now would do that? Who is the guy that you look at and say, this is the guy that in a bad moment, besides Chicharito, but Chicharito's not playing, so let's take him out of the equation right now. Who on this current team that's active is going to be like, okay, we're in a very bad moment. I can't pick one out confidently and say, okay, this is going to be our like rah-rah guy and leader. I mean, if I had to choose one, maybe Raheem Edwards, but I don't think anybody on that roster, the way it's constructed right now, is going to be that vocal guy. And I think that's a big part of the mentality. I think you talk about locker rooms and energy and personality of teams. What is the personality of this team right now? Because the same way the fans are divided, I think the team is as well.
You make a great point. Yeah, that is a very great point because if you don't have right, everybody expects Chicharito, and we've seen his leadership throughout his tenure with the Galaxy. If you don't have that guy in the locker room, it kind of just look. We're not there in the locker room or anything like that. We have no idea, but it just comes across to your point that it seems like, all right, we lost. We got to go home. We're going home. Like I don't know. It just seems like that. It just feels that way. Even though they got a point. It just seems like, all right, we're lucky. It just seems like we're lucky we got a point. Let's go back home. Let's see what we can do. And it's just like you're right. There's no real leadership without Chicharito there on the locker room in the pitch, right? And who is that guy? Who is that veteran, that person? I don't know. It could be maybe Bond. You said Raheem Edwards, but we're not really.
Bond would be the closest. Bond would be the closest one, I would say.
Yeah, but you also need someone that's on the field too. That's hey, when it's on the field, I know Bond's on the field, but he's a keeper. I'm talking about like in the game and everything in the action to voice his opinion. Yeah, and I think that just comes on the personnel that they brought in, unfortunately, and it just goes to like everything we've been talking about the front office, the coaching, and all these different things, and it's just very bizarre because how the season has started for them. It doesn't look like it's going to be a good year for them, even though they're very talented. But things need to change, and without being able to add players in the summer, I think that we're going to see. I think that's going to hurt them a lot more than people realize because the signings that they did last summer made this team better. Look, everything can kind of change here, but if we don't see a change in formation or anything like that, and if Chicharito and Douglas Costa obviously aren't playing, I think we're still gonna. To me, I think you're gonna see a lot of the same things until those players come back or a formation change because they definitely need a big change. Let's talk about one signing that they're bringing on. Their closest signing, left back Julian Aude. He's Argentinian from Lanús. What are your thoughts about this signing? He's a left back. They already got a left back in Raheem Edwards, but they're bringing this youngster in. What are your thoughts on this?
I think Vanny's mindset would probably be free Raheem and have him play as more of a winger, which I think is a good idea for the Galaxy. Somebody that he knows that has played that position for him and for other teams as well. I think that would be the most logical move there. But it comes down to the point of if that transition that we talked about. The Galaxy were very lucky last year when they made those summer signings that it seemed to transition quickly and work. But I think it's a little easier for a midfield to transition than a defense is, especially when the back line looks that shaky. So it might be, let's give this some time to work and gel. But you have to go in and establish that right idea and also establish who's going to be those four. If you're going to play that four in the back, who are going to be those four guys? Because constant rotation is not going to be great for them either. Now, if they do decide to maybe play the three back, then it's a lot different. But it's a good move. I think either anywhere on the defensive line that they could get some help, I think it's worthy because not only is it going to challenge other players to step up, but it's going to show Vanny exactly who are those guys that will be able to give the team the best options moving forward. But yeah, all in all, I would say it probably frees up Raheem a little bit, and it's probably something that Vanny would appreciate and like to push him a little forward. Whether or not that's successful for the Galaxy, who knows? But yeah, I think you get a player from a quality team, a quality league that has probably pretty good experience already. They could only help the Galaxy, but it's that transition to see how quickly that works, because you also have to realize too, like bringing players in. I'm not sure what his comfortableness or like
Yeah,
his
he's
comfort
19 years
or
old.
exactly like his comfort, and also like the culture, maybe the language. Like there's barriers for sure that for some teams, like say LAFC, when they had all these players coming from South America, there was a little bit of a easy way for them to all mix. This Galaxy team has players from all over the place, so maybe that is a little bit of a transition as well in terms of trying to get adapted there. But then you have players that could probably help him. Brugman, obviously Martin. So it can't be too many excuses, but it goes back to the point, like they probably should have had this move done a few, like maybe a month earlier than a few games into the season now, and trying to figure it out. But if they could get him up to speed quickly, I think he's coming in to slot in as a starter right away, and then they'll go from there.
Yeah, no, I think you make the interesting point. Maybe does Raheem does move up? Yeah, and look, it's a young player, and I think what's being reported right now, it's gonna be a 5 year signing. I think that's insane. I think he's probably gonna be very talented. Very few players from Argentina very rarely to disappoint. But I also feel like 5 years is a long time. We saw. I don't think I'm not comparing these two, but the last player that they signed for 5 years or close to that was Kevin Cabral. I'm not saying this is him. I've never seen him. I haven't seen any highlights. I just feel like 5 years is a long time. It's just a long time. You never know what you're gonna get from a player. Look, maybe if they're running in this high, he's gonna probably come to start. But I feel like that's a lot of pressure to be a starter right away to be the starting left back right away at 19 years old. Not because of his age. It's more so of getting adjusted to the league and to the lifestyle, how it is here in America. Look, you and I have traveled a lot, right? You got family in South America. I've been to South America. It's a big culture shock when you go to South America. And even when you come from South America and you come, look, I don't know if he's been to America. It's a big culture shock, and it just is. Whether even if you're coming from Europe, you're going to Europe or you're coming back to Europe, and I think it's even harder when you switch countries and you're asked to play right away, because you don't have that comfort of your friends, your family, or certain people. Yeah, you have your teammates, but it's not like having your mom and dad or your boys like, hey, we're on this together. Let's go get food here at the local market here, or let's go to In and Out or something like here, like we do something in LA or something like that. You know what I'm saying? And at 19 years old, I feel like you need that. And especially if you're asked to be a starter right away, or just different things, you need some of that comfort. And then maybe the LA Galaxy, maybe in the behind the scenes, they do provide that or anything like that. But I think nevertheless, it's going to take this player some adjustment. We still got to see his visa process. That takes some time. We don't know when he could potentially be on this field, but I think all the elements outside the field, you can kind of prevent this. And I think I was watching the MLS 360 show. I think it was a 360 show, and they talked about this. And they mentioned that St. Louis, right? The team that you went to see, St. Louis, they brought all the European players 6 or 7 months before the season started. They got well acclimated. They got their driver license. Like all the things before the season started, because they knew. I'm paraphrasing. From what they said. They said they knew that was going to take some time. And I think anybody that's traveled or lived outside or been to a different country or understand that regardless what age you are, whatever, that takes some transition period, right? Just a lot of those times. And I feel sometimes when that transition period, some players can adjust real quick. If you've traveled a lot, you can adjust real quick, different things. But if this is your first time or this and that, there's certain things like feeling homesick or just things that players don't realize. There's other players that are going to take a lot longer and to adjust to things than other players. And I feel like those are things that St. Louis got it right. Right. Look, they're 3-0. It's early or anything like that. But that point that was made by the broadcaster is a big point, because it just goes to show that you want to make sure your players feel comfortable and at home. And sometimes I don't feel like some of these youngsters get that opportunity when they come to these leagues or when they go somewhere else. You got to be able to show yourself right away. And now those outside things are a lot harder than I think a lot of people realize.
Those transitions aren't easy, and you bring up all valid and great points. And look at somebody like even Chicho Arango, who was able to come into this league and have success, and a little bit older than these younger players, and still openly talked about how hard it was for him in the beginning, because
It took him some time, though. It took him some time the first couple seasons.
Exactly.
for
exactly.
months, a couple months.
And you're talking about somebody who has played in different countries already, who is 10 years old. Well, not 10, almost 7, 8 years older than the player that's 19 or whatever the case may be. So if that's the case for somebody that's a little more established, imagine being a kid at that moment. So it is, you can't just bank on coming in and being like, oh yeah, he's going to be automatic, because you do have to adjust in many different ways. And look at, they're still waiting for Kevin Cabral to adjust, and he's playing games with the Rapids too right now. So it's like, I mean, listen, you never know what can happen, man.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's a true thing. And I think, to me, I just feel like I've seen it from a lot of MLS teams that they depend so much on a youngster. And I just think that's unfair. I'm not saying the Galaxy are depending on this individual, but I just feel like when you rush and things like that, it makes it tricky if you don't give the player proper time to adjust. We'll see what he can bring to the table and everything like that coming here left back. But I think if they ask him right away to be that left back starter, and I think that would be a lot right away. I think it would be. I think you gotta give them some months, and like you said, I don't think the Galaxy have months to get this right. That's the thing. So we'll see what happens here. They,
The time is short.
yeah, the time is short. The game is on Saturday. They play the Vancouver Whitecaps. They haven't got a win. They only have one goal in these two games. They need a win. They need some goals. So we'll see what happens this Saturday. Anything else you'd like to add before we wrap things up, Andy?
Yeah, quick shout for the Leagues Cup. There was the bracket reveal and the teams that were revealed,
Right.
this week. And it's interesting talking about the Galaxy now that I kind of look at how things pan out. The Galaxy are in obviously in the West. It's like a March Madness type of setup bracket. But we talk about time and things in the season, how they could progress. Teams that are coming into this tournament, like the Mexican sides, know the Galaxy. Obviously, Chicharito's there. There's past players that have been there, Mexican players, and I think that any team that may have the potential to face the Galaxy, a Mexican side, is going to turn up because they know what that means. Especially Chicharito being on the roster, whether he's playing or not, it just adds a whole different dynamic. So they're in a group with Leon. Whatever happens in their groups, whatever the way it lines up, the teams that they have a possibility of facing after their group stages, Tigres, Monterrey, two pretty solid teams in Liga MX. The Portland Timbers, San Jose Earthquakes, two teams that in MLS will give Galaxy trouble. One is obviously a big rivalry. One is Portland. And then if they somehow do Seattle's over there as well. I forgot to mention Seattle. I'm leaving Vancouver and RSL out. I'm giving more of a look. But Seattle, Portland, San Jose. And if they do happen to progress, LAFC is waiting for them there because they have that first round bye because of winning MLS Cup. So you think about certain things in the way that they're happening. The summer is not going to be a huge window for the Galaxy because of the sanctions and everything going on. And now you have this tournament, and if they're limping into this tournament in July and they're matched up with that competition, Mexican teams will feast and MLS teams will feast because of the stature of having a player like Chicharito, more so for the Mexican sides, and being able to prove a point against them. So we talk about 2 months, whatever the amount of time people say maybe allotted for transition, and you have to be better than that for sure leading into the summer, because the summer is not going to be an easy go around either.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. So a great look ahead, and what's coming up here in a couple months with the Leagues Cup tournament and then everything else. Look, we'll see what happens this Saturday with the Galaxy, what happens moving forward, and also see how quickly Chicharito and Douglas Costa could join the team, because they definitely need them. They definitely need a lot of things, but we'll see what happens Saturday. Andy, my brother, I appreciate you once again for hopping on. So that's going to wrap things up. Guys, thank you guys for listening. We'll catch